Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Laughing Man Network Football Fantasycast. I am your host. My name is Rodney DeJong. This is a new thing that we're doing here at the Laughing Man Network. I'm just a huge football fan, and even though we usually do wrestling and gaming, we decided that we're going to delve a little bit into fantasy football as the season starts. 2022 season starts in just a couple of days here. Super excited to get that started. I'm going to be by myself today. Sometimes I'm going to bring in my brother, who's a really big fantasy fan. I'm going to bring in some friends, bounce some ideas around, and kind of give y'all an opportunity to hear a layman's explanation and, maybe just some ideas and some talk of fantasy from just some people who have just been playing it for a long time. I'm not an analyst. Not going to claim to be an analyst. I just love fantasy football. I follow it very closely, and never going to claim to be a professional at this. Never going to be claim to be an expert. I don't think those people exist. In the end, we're all taking risks. We're rolling the dice, and today we're going to get started and see where this goes. So, just an introduction on myself. I've been playing fantasy football for about 18 years now. I started back in the days of drafting LaDainian Tomlinson, Priest Holmes, just my early days, Michael Vick. Been doing it a long time. I've seen a lot. I've come a long way. I remember my first live draft where it wasn't auto-drafted, or I didn't pick up an orphan team. I went in the first round and drafted Reuben Drones, who I think at the time might have been a 6th-round pick, but I thought I was so smart. Had Jake Plummer as my QB1. I picked him up in the 2nd round. And I've come a long way, and I'm hoping that I can help everybody just be able to hear someone normal talk, not selling their ideas, maybe not grinding away on PFF or Underdog or any of these other apps who give you their own rankings. We're just going to go through it today. I'm going to give you some of my guys who I prefer for the season. It's a little late for drafting, but if you are drafting starting for the week 2 of the season, or if, maybe you already drafted, I'm going to give a couple of ideas of guys that maybe you can get on the cheap. Maybe you should be looking out for. Maybe you should go out there and start and make a move for now, before they blow up. So we're going to start now, and I'm going to give you a rundown of players that I'm targeting for the 2022 season. And as I said, if you already drafted, that's fine. You probably did. The season starts in 2 days. We are getting this started late. But maybe these are guys that you might be able to make a move for. If you picked up a Kyler Murray, a Josh Allen, or, maybe you don't want to let go of those guys, but if you need to make the rest of your team a little stronger, you might be able to package that guy down for maybe another QB on this list. And most of my guys that I'm going to talk about are going to be super flex. I play a lot of all PPR, 1-point PPR, 6-point passing touchdowns. So maybe make a few adjustments depending on your roster, according to that. So, to get started, we're going to run down my quarterback targets for the season. Some of these guys, maybe guys that you're already targeting, they may not be a surprise to you. But as far as Superflex goes, these are some guys that I really want to get my hands on as far as building my roster from top to bottom. So my first one is going to be Dak Prescott. This may seem like, Dak's already a top quarterback. Yes, Dak is a top 10 quarterback probably in fantasy on most people's boards. But I've seen a little disrespect for Dak. He gets pushed back in drafts. He gets, goes behind the Jalen Hurtses and all the Lamars and Mahomes and all those top guys. Dak's always the afterthought. Now, if you drafted a guy, like I said, like a Kyler Murray or a Josh Allen, you're not going to get the same rushing upside with Dak. But if you need help on the rest of your roster, I think it would be a good idea to maybe trade one of those guys down, get Dak, and maybe a piece. If you need help at running back and you just need a guy to fill in. Right now you might not be dealing with injuries, but come in a few weeks, you may have a few injuries that you need to deal with, and you have to fight through. So making a move like that, I don't think is too drastic when you're talking about the Cowboys, who, as much as they get as far as maybe Dak crumbles in the fourth quarter or something like that, the Cowboys have a top offense almost every year under Dak Prescott. And as far as fantasy goes, I don't care what happens in real life. If he's out there and he's chucking the football, I want those points. So if you can trade a top quarterback down just a few spots, grab Dak, and then grab a running back later with Singletary, or maybe not even Singletary. You can step it up a little bit. Try and squeeze out an AJ Dillon. Get a guy that can help you fill out your roster. As far as Dak goes, he's finished 7, 10, 14, 2, 32nd was the year he got hurt, and 8. He's been a top 10 quarterback almost every year, and he's been the second-rated quarterback in a year. I think when it comes down to it, you're not going to see too much of a difference in the points by the end of the season, and Dak can help you win your team with the help of another piece that you get in a trade. So my next one down is an obvious. This is a guy he was going super flex leagues. He's going to the back end, middle to the back end, sometimes falling to the second round of these drafts, and that's Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of people talking if Lamar Jackson is a legit top quarterback in the league and if he deserves to be paid. I'm not worried about that. This is fantasy football. I mean, when Lamar Jackson's on the field, he runs the ball. He's got a good deep ball. His accuracy issues are up in the air. But he's got a top tight end. He's got running backs who can catch the ball when healthy. And we all know they need to get healthy before, the offense really starts to pick up. But Rashad Bateman's a good wide receiver. And they have a decent wide receiver core around him, Duvernay and Prochet. They're not great wide receivers, but they're guys who can fill roles. And when you have a quarterback who can run and pick up 10 to 20 yards on any given play, that's a great bonus. You're going to get 1 point for every 10 yards rushing. So when you play Lamar, let's say you're not drafting or picking up or trading for the best quarterback in the league. Okay, he has his issues. He may get 3,000 to 3,500 passing yards, and that's not a whole lot. But if he's throwing up 700 to 1,000, 1,100 rushing yards every season, you're looking at every week, you're basically starting a QB2 and a running back 2 every week in your QB spot. So if you can find anybody who may be limped into Lamar, or maybe early months ago, if y'all drafted early, Lamar is a guy, if possible, I would like to get my hands on. And again, if you want to trade down one of those top guys, an Herbert, Josh Allen, and you want to trade back just a few spots and see if you can squeeze out a little extra value out of him, Lamar is a guy I'm always targeting. Now, to dig a little deeper, as far as Superflex leagues go, this is a guy that I would love to have as my second quarterback. And that's Raiders quarterback David Carr. Now, David Carr has never been my favorite quarterback in the league. He's been very mediocre. His time since the beginning of the season, since the beginning of his career in the NFL, he's averaged about a QB 14. That's, depending on the league you're in, that's back-end QB1, borderline QB1, high-end QB2. And that's his average. He's finished back around QB 20. And his best season was when he had Amari Cooper, who was young and on fire, and he had Michael Crabtree. He threw 30 touchdowns, the only time in his career that he's thrown 30 touchdowns. And since then, he's thrown 20, 24. He's put up decent yardage. Last year, I think he had 4,800 yards, which is decent. And if you recall, who were his wide receivers? Exactly. The guy had nothing but Darren Waller, and Darren Waller was banged up last year. And this guy still managed to put up 4,800 yards. This year, things are changing. He's got Devontae Adams. He's got Darren Waller supposedly healthy. He's got a little bit he's dealing with, but he's got Renfro also working out of the slot. That's going to take a lot of pressure off Devontae Adams. It's going to make it a little harder for them to double team Adams. Adams came from an offense with Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers was hyper efficient. Derek Carr might not be as efficient, but these two guys have a history together. They played at Fresno State together. Derek Carr likes to sling the ball, and Devontae Adams can get downfield. So I think with that matchup, with having a good wide receiver core, good tight end, if everybody can stay healthy, I think you're looking at a QB1 in the season with Derek Carr. And if you can get that in your second quarterback slot in the Superflex League, that's great. Give me more of Derek Carr. Now, we're going to move on to running back targets that I have for the season. Again, this is if you're drafting still late, you can grab these guys or try and go out and get them, because I think these guys are going to have a difference-making, a chance to make a difference on your roster. So my first target, he's going to be a little harder to acquire. If you're drafting, you can look at him. I like him in the back end of the second. Is James Conner. James Conner's in a top offense. He's with a quarterback who's going to chuck the ball downfield. So linebackers are going to have to kind of watch the middle of the field. They have guys like Ronald Moore. They still have A.J. Green. They have Ertz. They have McBride coming up, who they're going to want to get some targets to. And Marquise Brown is going to open up the top of the offense. He's going to, safeties are going to have to watch him, at least until DeAndre Hopkins comes back, and then it gets even better. So James Conner, I think, is going to have a lot of running room. He's only got Eno Benjamin behind him, who's supposedly had a good camp. But James Conner looks like he's going to get a massive workload again. And a team that gets the ball downfield, they can run. They're going to move the ball, which means they're going to have more red zone trips. So that just means Connor's going to have more opportunities for touchdowns. The biggest issue with him is whether or not he can stay healthy. But even if he misses a couple of games, few players play every game of the season. If he misses 2 or 3 games, you make adjustments. But if you can have him for most of the season, I think you're looking at a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yardage. So my number 2 is going to back it up a little further, and that's going to be A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is a guy that's been on the rise in the past couple of months. He's backing up Aaron Jones in Green Bay, but he gets a lot of touches. I think this is a guy that's going to get 180 to 200 touches in the Green Bay backfield. And that's plenty of touches for a guy like this, especially on a team that doesn't have any true wide receivers that have chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. They have Lazard. And Lazard he's a really good blocker in the run game. They love him for that. He's a big guy. And he's a big guy, long arms. He can catch balls in the red zone. So that's about it. I think A.J. Dillon comes in, especially in the first few weeks, until Aaron Rodgers can build up chemistry with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson can get back on the field. Sammy Watkins is a risk. We'll talk about him later. But I think in the first few weeks, A.J. Dillon is going to be used a lot in maybe like wishbone packages. He's going to get a lot of targets his way. Aaron Jones is also going to steal some targets because Aaron Jones can also catch. But when it comes to getting down in the red zone, getting down close to the goal line, I don't think it's Aaron Jones, just Aaron Jones anymore. A.J. Dillon is pushing 240 pounds, and that's a lot of weight to stop when you get down a few feet from the goal line. So I think A.J. Dillon is going to produce running back 2 value, even as a backup. In drafts, he was going in the 6th round, 7th round, some. I think that's a guy you want to get your hands on. If Aaron Jones has any issues, pulls the hamstrings, got to miss some games, you're looking at a legit running back 1 in A.J. Dillon. So number 4, pushing it back even further. Over in Atlanta, you got Cordarrelle Patterson, who had a great year last year. He's been one of the best return men for years. He's always been an athlete. He's always probably been a little underused by the teams he's been on. But in Atlanta, last year, it's almost all they had, and he got a little overused and started to slow down towards the end of the season. This year, he's supposedly playing running back. He's listed as a running back now. But I expect him to play a little more wide receiver, move around, at least until maybe Drake London, gets his feet under him, solidifies his role. But the running back that I would like to get for cheap is Tyler Algier. Algier was a bruising running back in college. He's got all. He can catch the ball. The only issue is he's young. He doesn't have a lot of speed, but if they get down in the red zone, I don't think Cordarrelle Patterson's going to be the guy that they're going to feed the ball to. Atlanta's offense is kind of up in question. They have Mariota. Mariota can move around a little bit. I don't think he's going to be great. But if Atlanta can move up and down the field and at least get into the red zone, you might be looking at Algier scoring a few touchdowns throughout the season. And for the price that you would have to pay for him, maybe it's just like a throw-in. Maybe there's a guy that you like that you just want to trade off because you like one guy better than the other, just because you personally like the guy. See if they'll throw Algier, into the trade just to see if you can get him. Take the risk on it. I think I was getting him in the 13th, 14th round. I'm completely fine with that. So, and my last one, a guy that I think you should try and get your hands on, about in the same range as Algier, is going to be Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert last year, he got his opportunity. Monty was a little banged up. And Khalil Herbert came out and he got a lot of touches. He showed out as a rookie. Kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really talking about him yet. But he's a 3-down back. He can play every down. There's no Tariq Cohen there anymore. There's no Damien Williams. There's nobody who's going to come out and steal passing down work. And even with Monty there, it's his contract year. They may work Monty into the ground, but if they don't, Khalil Herbert may still be coming in for passing downs, and that's going to be valuable to anybody maybe in the flex position or if you need help somewhere down the line in the middle of the season. But if Monty goes down, you're looking at a full down back, and you may be looking at a back-end RB1, high-end RB2 on a weekly basis. So I think Herbert's a guy that you should go out there and get now while he's still pretty cheap. So now we'll get into our wide receiver targets. These are guys that I also want to get my hands on. Again, drafts probably happen, so value is going to be up in the air. But number 1 is Deontay Johnson. I am personally a Mitch Trubisky truther. I don't think he's going to be QB1, but I think he's going to be decent enough. I think he's going to be better than Big Ben was the past few years. And Deontay Johnson's role isn't changing. Ever since he came in, he's kind of taken over what used to be the Antonio Brown role. And he's not Antonio Brown necessarily ability-wise, but he's still really fast. He's a really good route runner. And he's been a rock-solid wide receiver, too, ever since he's been in the league, borderline wide receiver 1. Last year, his target share, I think he got like 168 targets or something like that. I don't see him getting that again. Big Ben threw the ball a lot, but Big Ben's distance that he threw on average was nothing. It was bottom barrel of the league. And I think Trubisky, who has athletic ability, he can roll out of the pocket, he can move around. I think Trubisky can buy Deontay Johnson time and let Deontay Johnson get some more of those double moves, get downfield, score more touchdowns, and be a little more efficient with his targets. Deontay Johnson is a guy I want in all leagues. Number 2, if you, again, and I'll have a trade example for this, is T. Higgins. T. Higgins, last year, he struggled a little bit early on. He came on big towards the end. He did have a shoulder injury, and it nagged him in the offseason. He just got surgery a couple months ago, and he's recovering. He hasn't played in the preseason. So he may have a slow start to the season. They may ease him in and give maybe Boyd a few more targets, work Mixon a little more. But I think come week 3, Higgins is going to be full go. Higgins is an athletic freak. He's a big man. He's not quite as fast as Chase, not as big of a deep threat as Chase. But I think this is the guy who's going to get the targets. I think this is the guy who's going to benefit now that Chase has had his big breakout season. I think Higgins is going to benefit from not getting safety coverage over the top, and he's going to be able to work the middle of the field. Higgins, to me, if as far as drafts went, Chase going in the first round, I'm not big on wide receiver in the first round, and Chase had a huge rookie season. But do we really think from the position that he's in that he's going to get that much better? I don't know. I think he's a great football receiver. But as far as fantasy goes, the type of production that he put out last year is hard enough for a veteran wide receiver to put on. He doesn't get the target share like a Cup, Michael Thomas from a few years ago. I don't think he's going to get that kind of work. I think he's still looking at, 80 receptions in that range. Touchdowns are hard to predict, and I think that's where he's going to eat the most at is touchdowns. He's going to do well, but I think some weeks, if he doesn't score a touchdown, you may be a little disappointed from a guy that you drafted top 5 overall, top 8 overall. But I think Higgins is a guy that if you can get him in the 4th round, if you got him in the 4th round, bottom of the 5th round, in some of the leagues I'm seeing, I think this is a guy that could possibly outpace Chase in fantasy points. I don't know if he'll have the yardage, but in PPR, he'll have the receptions. I think he's a touchdown target, especially if they can get down in the red zone. I think he's going to be a little more of a touchdown target than Chase. I think Chase is going to get downfield on guys. But when they get close, Higgins is, I think, going to be that big, long-armed receiver that they try to feed the ball to. So I think Higgins, you're looking at potential round 1 draft value in the 4th or 5th round, and I think that's great. I just saw Higgins go for of my future partner who's going to join us at one point. My brother just obtained Higgins, Singletary, and Sanders for McLaurin and Gibson. I love that. I think Higgins outpaces McLaurin. And he's just a guy that I want to get my hands on personally. So, next down, I have Julio Jones. If you can get your hands on Julio Jones, he was going in the last 2 rounds, 3 rounds of drafts for a long time. A lot of people are down on Julio from the past few years. I don't blame them. He's getting older. He's having hamstring issues. He's having soft tissue issues. I don't blame you for being off on him. However, Antonio Brown, on a points per game basis, was the wide receiver 5 last year when healthy with Tom Brady. He's no longer there. He was the 3rd wide receiver. And he still produced wide receiver 5 point per game production. That's elite level especially for a wide receiver 3 on a team. Julio was right there at one point with AB. He was one of the top wide receivers in the league. Even with limited snaps, coming in as the third receiver when they run 3 receiver sets. Sometimes he's not going to be on the field when they run 2 receiver sets. But I think Julio Jones is a guy worth stashing, that if they can maintain his health, I think you're looking at high production, especially with Gronk not there anymore. They're going to need somebody else to target in the end zone besides Mike Evans. So if you can go out there and you can get Julio Jones cheap, try and do that. Try and throw him in to just if you've got an even trade and you just like a guy again, see if they'll throw Julio Jones in on top. Just see what happens. Worst they can say is no, and you could be looking at a wide receiver, 2 for cheap. Another guy I'm looking at is DeAndre Hopkins. If you have the wide receiver room to get through the first 6 weeks where DeAndre Hopkins is going to be suspended, he's not going to be playing. When he comes back, he had even more time to recover. Last year he had some injury issues. But before last year, he's been one of the most consistent wide receivers in the league. He plays almost every game, every single year. If he's a little banged up, he still plays, and he's still a touchdown threat. I think last year was an outlier, even though he's getting older. I think with bringing in Marquise Brown, he won't have to blow the top off the defense as much. And I think he'll be able to come in and maybe be a little more efficient with his targets, work the middle of the field while Marquise Brown gets downfield. So I like DeAndre Hopkins. I think you can get, again, wide receiver 2 value, especially if you get him from somebody early in the season. Maybe somebody who loses their first 2 weeks and they have DeAndre Hopkins sitting there and they know they need to turn something around at some point. Try and go get D-Hop. Throw him on your roster and just reap the benefits later in the season. So, top tight end targets that I think you may be able to afford that I like going into this season. These are guys that I drafted as much as I could, and they may still be going pretty cheap. My top one is Zach Ertz. His value has come up a little bit. He was getting drafted in 6th, 7th rounds or so. But when I was grabbing him a few weeks ago, he was 9th, 10th round. People weren't as excited about him. He was the tight end 5 last year. He's on a team that is going to push the ball downfield. Again, Marquise Brown is going to be blowing the top off of defenses. You have Ronald Moore, who's really athletic. He's going to be in more of that Christian Kirk role, opening up the field a little bit. Zach Ertz is going to be right there getting covered by linebackers. Even at 31 years old, I think you're looking at an efficient tight end on an offense that's going to get to the red zone a lot, and that just equals touchdowns. I'm not scared of McBride yet. So if you can go down and get Ertz, trade down off of if you need to round out your roster again and you need to trade down off of a Kittle, or if you want to trade down off of a Hawkinson or something like that, and you can move over to Ertz, I'm all for it. Next down, I'm going to go super deep, and we're going to go with David Njoku. This is a guy who has had a lot of hype around him for the past 5 years now. He's really athletic. He moves like a wide receiver. He's very fast. He's not the best in run blocking, but that doesn't matter for fantasy. This team went and paid him, I think, top 5 tight end money. So I expect him to not be so much involved in ask the block, because that's not money you pay to a tight end who's going to be blocking. That's money you pay to a tight end who is going to be catching footballs. And when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, they have Amari Cooper. And after that, Kareem Hunt catching balls, Donovan Peoples-Jones, not excited. I I think Njoku is going to run a lot of routes, even when they run 12 personnel and they have 2 tight ends on the field. I think Njoku is going to be the one that goes out and benefits from those sets and benefits from being covered by linebackers. He's much faster than most linebackers. He's taller than most linebackers. And I think this is a guy who's going to get used. It's up in the air with Jacoby Brissett. But when you get Njoku in the 14th, 15th round of drafts, he doesn't have a lot of value that comes with him. So if you can move over, if you're streaming tight end for the season, if you're picking up low guys and you're just going to see what happens, Njoku is a guy I think you need to go out there and acquire and go ahead and take that risk on, because I think he's going to have at least a few big games, and in the end, you may have yourself a top 8 tight end by the end of it. So if you can, go out there, get Njoku for cheap. My third tight end who I would possibly target is going to be Gerald Everett. He had a few good games last season. There was a lot of hype of him going to play with Russell Wilson. But last year they didn't let Russell Wilson cook, as they say. He had overall probably a disappointing season. He had a few games where maybe he helped win you the week. You needed a tight end to put in there. I've always been a fan of Everett, but now he's in a top offense in the NFL on a team that was top 8 in passing to the tight end last year. Herbert loves passing to the tight end. He loves it. They're going to throw the ball 40, 45 times a game. That's just how it's going to go. And they have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Eckler. So if maybe you have 25, 30 targets wrapped up in them, you're still going to have 10 to 15 targets left. And if Everett can come down and get 6, 7, 8 of those targets, you could be looking at touchdowns and good yardage because of everybody else on the field that defenses are going to have to respect. So to me, Everett is going to be another top 8, top 9 tight end on the season potentially. So, a couple of cheap acquisitions. We're going to combine all this together. Another couple of guys that I think just overall you may be able to go out there and acquire really cheap right now. And one is Treylon Burks. Burks got a lot of criticism before preseason started. He had the asthma coming in. I'm not worried about the asthma. This is a guy who was playing against the SEC, against top corners, against guys that got drafted in the NFL draft this year as top corners, and he beat them. Like, he produced the entire season. He produced multiple seasons. Burks is a big guy. He profiles similar to A.J. Brown. He might not be as fast as A.J. Brown, might not quite be as talented as A.J. Brown, but he's going to take that A.J. Brown role. And that A.J. Brown role is already in the playbook. They already got plays set up for it. And Treylon Burks is a decent enough athlete, good enough athlete, that he's going to be able to go out there and produce potentially right away. Again, I'm not worried about the asthma. They play a sport where every play is a few seconds long. If he needs to come off and take a breather, that's fine. Hit the inhaler, take a seat, get some water, come back in, catch a touchdown. I'm completely fine with that. So if you can get Treylon Burks, on the cheap or as a throw-in, go ahead and get that, because I think down the stretch this season, Treylon Burks is going to be looking at a pretty efficient touchdown production. Another guy, Singletary. Devin Singletary. It's not sexy. Devin Singletary is not sexy. Neither is James Cook, though. In my opinion, James Cook is not going to be the one to come in and demand any kind of lion's share of the backfield. But Devin Singletary is a guy that the Bills trust. They could have got rid of him. They could have gotten themselves a Breece Hall. They could have gone out and got a Kenneth Walker, but they didn't. They went and got themselves another guy who can catch balls and, play a split back role. Devin Singletary, he may not get 300 touches. He's not going to get 300 touches. He's probably not going to get 250 touches. But last year, in the last 5 games of the season, he was a mid to back end running back 1. It wasn't pretty, but they started feeding him the ball 20 times a game, and he was producing. So when you have a guy like that who he works for your team, you have the chemistry, why break that up? I'm very into Singletary. I think he's a decent enough running back where he's going to get you a floor of 10 points a week or so. And when you're talking about floors, to me, 10 points is a win. If he scores a touchdown, all of a sudden you have 16, 17 points. Even better. If he gets some more receptions. You know, they had games last season where he was getting 7, 8 targets. I like that. James Cook might snipe a few of those. But when you're in a high-powered offense, I'm okay with a split backfield like that. As long as he's involved in the passing game somewhat, and he's the guy they trust, I'm going to go ahead and take my risk with Devin Singletary, especially if he can come cheap. Last guy is Dontrell Hilliard. Tennessee didn't want to let him go. Tennessee picked up, drafted Hassan Haskins, who is kind of like I guess you can call him a bargain bin Derrick Henry. Everybody expected they got himself another Derrick Henry. So if Derrick Henry gets hurt, I don't think that's what happens. Dontrell Hilliard isn't a small running back. He's got decent size. He's got good hands. He can catch the ball. And in camp, apparently, he's the clear-cut number 2 on the team. Dontrell Hilliard was one of the top running backs in efficiency metrics last year in a small sample. He only got, I think, 3 games where he started, but he was a top 20 running back every game that he got the start. And when you can produce me 15, 16, 17 points as a backup, I'm good with that. Derrick Henry gets a lot of touches. He gets a lot of work. He doesn't have a huge injury history, but if he does get hurt, Dontrell Hilliard is a guy that you can get either off of free agency or you can get there just a free toss-in piece. Again, if you have a deep bench and somebody's stashing him, go get him. You know, Dynasty, go ahead and get him. He may save your season this season. So I think Dontrell Hilliard is a guy that you can target in fantasy drafts or fantasy free agency and stash him off and on if you work your outs and you work a kicker off your roster or anything like that. I think it would be worth at least keeping an eye on him and keeping tabs on him. So, guys that I want to sell. These are guys that I just don't want on my team. I didn't draft any of these guys, and these are guys that I think you may still be able to get value from people who do want to see them do well and believe they will. Number 1, Cam Akers. He's coming off that Achilles, and I know you've heard every channel and everybody talk about how bad it is with the Achilles, how guys don't recover from the Achilles. He came back after, 6 months? But he was horrible. He had one of the worst yards per rush or per touch in the NFL when he came back. Why they did that, I don't know. This year they say he's healthy, but I don't know if he's going to have that same cut, that same fire. And I'm not willing to find out because once you find out, it's too late. And you're not going to get value for him. He was going in the 3rd round in a lot of drafts. I think that's a guy that you can trade right now. Maybe go get David Montgomery. You know, back up a little bit, David Montgomery. And, hey, while you're at it, can you toss in, one of these other guys that we were talking about? Can you toss in Algier? I'll take him and stash him on my roster. That's fine. I'll take Montgomery and Algier over having Cam Akers any day. So, if you can get your hands on him, on a guy like that, and get rid of Cam Akers, get him off your roster, I approve. Next down, I have Gibson. I talked about a trade earlier my brother made. He sent Gibson and Terry McLaurin for Higgins, Singletary, and Sanders. I'm just not big on Gibson. He was a wide receiver in college. Everybody was hyped up, like, oh, he's going to catch so many balls, but he hasn't shown it. The offense hasn't, Ron Rivera hasn't shown the confidence in him to be the pass-catching running back. They re-signed J.D. McKissick, who had a big season a couple years ago, and they brought in Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson was a great running back in college. He came in, and there was a lot of hype about him possibly taking the job from Gibson. So all of a sudden, Brian Robinson's out of the picture, and everyone thinks just Antonio Gibson is all of a sudden a third, fourth round running back again. I don't think so. He was falling back to 7th, 8th, 9th round in some drafts just a few weeks ago before the Brian Robinson occurrence. So I'm not going to go in and buy on Gibson. If I have him on my team, I'm going to go ahead and try to move him, especially now that his value's up again. I think there's some people who are truthing on him and drafted him early. So if I got him in the 7th, 8th, 9th round a few weeks ago, I'm trying to move him now as soon as possible. And as the trade my brother got, he got Higgins, Singletary, and Sanders. Singletary is a guy that I told you I like. Sanders is a bit risky, but he has, running back 2 potential. And maybe some weeks, maybe he puts up a big week and he gets you running back 1 points. Even better. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because I want Higgins, because I also think Higgins is, again, wide receiver 1 potential this season. So next down, I have J-Rob. Same thing as Akers. He had the Achilles, but his was later in the season. I'm not taking Robinson. I like him, but they have ETN. ETN has a history with Lawrence. Maybe they come in and do the running back 1, running back 2 thing, but I don't think Robinson is going to have that drive off of his foot until maybe next year. So I'm not waiting to find out. If you ended up with Robinson and reports are showing that he may play week 1, he may play week 2, go ahead and move him now before he comes out and, potentially lays a dud. I think there's some guys that you can go out there and get that you can piece him together and say, hey, look, Robinson's healthy. Take Robinson with this wide receiver and give me this guy, A.J. Dillon maybe. So I'm off on Robinson for the 2022 season. Next in line is going to be Chase Claypool. I do not want Chase Claypool on my team. Camp reports have said that he's basically going to be in the same role. He's going to be in that wide receiver 3 position for the Steelers. Pickens looks like he's beating him out. We thought Claypool, he's big, he's athletic. He got the nickname Mapletron, but it doesn't look like he's going to pan out to be that big-time receiver that we were hoping for. Everyone remembers he had the 2 seasons ago. He had the 2 games where he scored 4 touchdowns. That may happen sometimes. If you're in best ball, sure, go ahead and take Claypool. But I'm not banking on that because you're not going to know what weeks to start him. Some of the drafts I've seen him go, he's still going in the 9th round, 10th round. If you have him on your team and you can go, if you have to piece him together, or maybe you can get if you can go get Treylon Burks. If you can go out there and get Elijah Moore, I've seen Elijah Moore going 8th, 9th round, somewhere in that ballpark of wide receivers. But if you can move off of Claypool, I think you should move off of Claypool. And last, Deebo Samuel. I'm not sold that he's going to get that same type of production that he did last year. His big issue was he wanted to be paid, and there were rumors that maybe he didn't want to be worked as hard. With Trey Lance under center, they can move a little more, so they may not need his athleticism coming out of the backfield and with the short passes and stuff. Trey Lance can move out of the pocket. He's more athletic than Jimmy G. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to take a step up with this type of quarterback in play. And Deebo has a long history of soft tissue damage and groins and hamstrings and non-contact stuff. Last year he he started to get groin issues towards the end of the season, but he managed to make it through the whole season, which was probably, I think, if I'm remembering right, might be the first time he's done it in college or pro. I'm not sold on Deebo Samuel being able to repeat last year, especially on the price tag that comes with him, mid to back end second, early third. There's other wide receivers or running backs that I would rather take in that range than Deebo Samuel. So, guys that I think maybe you should watch as the season starts. These are high-risk players. High risk. I wouldn't bother rostering them right now, but I think you should keep an eye on them because when they are on the field and they are healthy, they just tend to produce. My number one is Sterling Shepard. It's sad. I love Sterling Shepard, and he's had a lot of injury issues over the years, but if you go back and look, when he plays, he's a rock-solid wide receiver, too. He gets the targets. Daniel Jones loves him from Sterling Shepard. He throws it to him constantly. Now, Sterling Shepard could get hurt on any week. He takes a lot of hard hits. He gets concussions. He gets, he does those crossing routes like Victor Cruz used to do, and he gets pounded. But if you need some help some weeks, you have somebody who's out for just a few weeks. If Sterling Shepard's healthy, Sterling Shepard is a sneaky guy that I think you can go pick up and you can get a few starts out of him, at least until he blows up. And if he does have a few good weeks, trade him before he gets hurt. Get a little bit of value out of him. See if you can go get somebody who may have a little more longevity in the season and maybe turns it on back into the season. Sneak in Treylon Burks. If Treylon Burks is having a rough few weeks to start the season and you have Sterling Shepard on your bench and he just explodes the first 3 weeks, try to work something to get Treylon Burks and let them deal with the potential injury issues of Sterling Shepard from there. So, next on my list is going to be Rondale Moore. Christian Kirk is gone. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season. All they have is Marquise Brown and A.J. Green. I think they have Antoine Wesley as well. He had a few good games last year. But Rondale Moore may be taking on that Christian Kirk role. And if you remember, Christian Kirk had games where he would randomly put up 1, 2, 3 touchdowns. He can work all over the field. He can work over the middle, the outside. He's got the speed. So Rondale Moore is a guy that I'm willing, in a high-powered offense like the Arizona Cardinals, I'm willing to take a risk on him at the end of the draft or free agency and get him before he blows up. I think his production goes back down when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. So if you can have Rondale Moore on your roster and he has 2-3 good weeks at the beginning of the season, you can move him and get somebody that you can use for the rest of the season. And then my last one, as far as high-risk players that I think you should watch out for, is Sammy Watkins. It feels dirty saying it, but Sammy Watkins is another guy that when he plays, he's pretty good. He gets hurt a lot. This is a guy that he may come out week 1, score 3 touchdowns, and then you may not see him for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But the thing is Aaron Rodgers doesn't have much experience at the wide receiver position in Green Bay. Watkins is their most experienced receiver outside of Randall Cobb, who plays the slot and who I think is 33, 34 years old. So I think Sammy Watkins has the potential, if he can stay healthy, he has the potential to be Aaron Rodgers' wide receiver 1. And I don't care who it is. If you're Aaron Rodgers' wide receiver 1, I kind of want a piece of that. So if you can keep your eyes on him, if you have fab, get ready to spend some fab. Or if you just have a deep bench and you want to throw Sammy Watkins on there, see if he has a big first week. Again, this is a guy that he could have week 1, week 2 have huge weeks. Trade him. Go get a guy who has, a more solid injury history. A guy that has a higher chance of lasting throughout the season. And let somebody else deal with that headache. But it's a guy that you can get on free agency, and you may be able to help build your roster stronger to get to that midway part of the season and have a decent record. Figure out your team from there. So, I'm going to go ahead and give my week 1. I have my starts and avoids of the week. I think as far as must starts, these are going to be guys that I'm not going to give you Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. You're going to start these guys every week anyway. These are guys that I'm going to give you that may be on the flex fringe or, borderline, maybe you have a couple of guys you're dealing with that are banged up, may not play like week 1, like Godwin or Dobbins or someone like that, and you need to slip somebody in there to play week 1. Remember, this is super flex that I mainly talk about. So as far as quarterbacks go, I'm going to give you guys that you may be able to slip into your super flex and get a decent week out of. My start at quarterback is going to be Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is currently projected in my leagues to score about 18 points on the season on the game. Baker Mayfield is fired up. He doesn't like they played Cleveland week 1. He doesn't like the way Cleveland treated him. They unceremoniously just threw him away. They brought in Watson, and they kind of forgot about the guy who fought for him for the past few years. And Baker Mayfield's not a great quarterback, but he's accurate. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks on deep ball throws. And they have Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, and now Laviska Shenault. Their top wide receiver could still be Christian McCaffrey. So I think Ron Rivera goes into this game, as much as Cleveland's defense is going to be, we're going to go get him. They're not a great secondary. They have a decent pass rush. Carolina can struggle, but they have some offensive weapons. I think Ron Rivera goes into this and game plans with a healthy CMC to get Baker Mayfield that confidence that he needs to, maybe look forward on the season with a little hope. I think this is an opportunity for Baker Mayfield to maybe come out and throw 3 touchdowns. To me, Baker Mayfield, if you can get him, depending on your roster, of course, if you can get him into that second quarterback slot this week, great. And if he has a great week, try and move up at quarterback. He may not be able to do that every week, but I think on week 1, he's going to come in ready to go. Running back, I'm going A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon week 1 with what receivers? Nobody knows who the top receivers are going to be in Green Bay. I think week 1 is a perfect opportunity for A.J. Dillon to come in, get a majority of the targets while the wide receivers are getting more experience running a few routes, get a better feel for playing with Rodgers. And I think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are going to eat. And A.J. Dillon, I don't think he's projected to score too much. I think he might be projected right around 10 points or so, 11 points. I think he can crush that. So if you have A.J. Dillon in your team, feel free to stick him in your running back slot, for your second running back, or put him in your flex. I think you can start him with confidence in week 1 of the NFL season. Wide receivers, I'm going Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is projected to score 9.8 points in most of my leagues that I play, roughly 9.8. This is a guy that he's the only real remaining target for New England as far as wide receiver goes. They have Aguilar, didn't work out. Aguilar's been pushed down the depth chart. They have Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne was a borderline cut candidate. They brought in Devontae Parker, who may take end zone work, but he's up and down. He's been inconsistent. Jacoby Myers, I think he scored 1 touchdown last season. Might have been 2. can correct me in comments if you want. But he got the target share. He got the yardage. I think he was putting up top-end wide receiver 3 production, bottom wide receiver 2 production some weeks without scoring touchdowns. I don't see that happening and being a consistent metric to follow. I think Jacoby Myers, the touchdowns come back. He has that positive regression, if you want to call it. I know a lot of people call it that. But I think he's going to turn out this year. He's going to score a few touchdowns, and he can give you that production. I think he beats out that 9.8 that he's projected to score this week and give you a good start to the season. I think they're going to try and get him on track and get Mac Jones some confidence going into the season. Tight end, I'm going Gerald Everett. It's against the Raiders. The Raiders, just historically in my mind, I've always known them as being bad against the tight end. And I think, once again, you have a top quarterback, a top offense, and this is going to be a team that the coach is going to want to get rolling early. And why not do it against the mediocre defense like the Raiders in a division game? I think Everett may come away with this with 5 or 6 balls and a touchdown. And I think he's going to beat out I think he's only projected to score like 9.5 points also. Another guy I'm looking at is Albert O. They did the trade with Russell Wilson from Seattle. Denver plays Seattle in week 1. I think Russell Wilson comes out and cooks and teaches Seattle a lesson. And I think Albert O, who's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league, he's one of the fastest tight ends in the league. I think Albert O comes away with the touchdown in week 1 of the season against a revenge game for Russell Wilson and the Broncos. Now, my must-sits of the week. Quarterback, I'm going Tua. I think Tua's going to have a lot of good games this season, but week 1 he plays against the Patriots. The Patriots have had preseason and everything else to come up with a game plan for week 1 of the season against Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Edmonds and Tua. And I think New England finds a way. I think Bill Belichick finds a way to try and break Tua's confidence in the season. And I don't know if Tua gets to the 21.5 points that he's projected to score this week. So if you have Tua as maybe your second quarterback, you probably have to start him in most cases. But if you happen to have another guy on the roster who maybe has an easier matchup, maybe even a Baker Mayfield, this first week I'd be willing to sit Tua just until give him a week to get his feet under. Running back, I'm going Damien Pierce. I know there's a lot of hype around the guy. He's a decent running back in college. He's had a good preseason. He's had a good camp. They're naming him the starter. But week 1, they get a really good defense in the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't think this is a team that is going to allow Damien Pierce to run all over him. I think the Texans are going to have to work out a few games and figure out what their offense is going to do. And I don't think Damien Pierce is going to get it done in week 1. I believe he may be projected to score 11 or 12 points. He may get that, but I think Indianapolis keeps him out of the end zone in week 1, and that's going to severely limit his upside for the week. Must-sits wide receiver, Drake London. Drake London's expected to score 12.5 to 13 points, depending on your scoring for your league. I'm not starting Drake London. He's playing against the Saints. He's gonna get Lattimore. He's gonna get one of the best corners in the league. Lattimore gives people fits, and the Saints play their division tough, especially the Falcons. They're known for week 1 when they play against the Falcons in week 1, they normally shut them down. I'm not playing Drake London. It's his first official game in the NFL. With Mariota, and I just think the Saints give him fits, and I don't think he gets to that 12.5 points. I think they keep him out of the end zone, and I think it's going to be a really ugly game for the Atlanta Falcons. Tight end, I'm going right back to the Falcons. I'm not starting Pitts. Pitts is projected in tight end premium. It's a score of 13.7 points. I think to do that, he would need a lot of yardage or a touchdown. And I'm not quite sure he does that in week 1. Like I said, I think Atlanta struggles this week. I don't think they really have an identity. And I don't think the Saints are going to be a team that is going to allow them to find their identity. They have a lot of players in their defense who are being put in the NFL top 100. They felt like they didn't get ranked as high as they should have. I think they're going to have that chip on their shoulder, and I think they're going to come out and crush Marcus Mariota and keep their wide receivers, at least their main wide receiver, and Drake London and Pitts, out of the end zone. Especially if you're looking at he may be covered by the Honey Badger. They may put Lattimore on him some. They got rid of Gardner Johnson, but I think with the linebackers and the secondary that they have, they're going to give them fits. So to me, avoid the Falcons this week. Just don't play them. Play somebody else. I'm going to give my hot takes to round this episode 1 out. I'm going to give you hot takes for the season that you may not like. You may agree with. These aren't things that, I'm going to swear by and are definitely going to happen, but these are things that I can see happening that I'm not necessarily going to put a bunch of money on it, but it's guys that I like in fantasy this year and don't like in fantasy, and things that might happen. Number 1, Mitchell Trubisky is a top 15 quarterback. He had a QB battle with Pickett. Apparently Pittsburgh doesn't think Pickett's quite ready to go. They're going to give Trubisky the helm first. And I think Trubisky is going to have a decent season. I think he's going to start for the whole season. I think he's got a good wide receiver. He's got a good wide receiver group, and he's got a really good running back behind him, and he's got a good young tight end in Pat Freiermuth. I think Trubisky is going to do enough with his legs and to open up the offense, allow Deontay Johnson to get downfield, Claypool to get downfield, especially in the red zone. I think Pickens might possibly take a step up early on and be a really good wide receiver for him. So I think Mitchell Trubisky, by the end of the season, you're going to be looking at high-end, mid-level QB2 production for a guy that was getting drafted in the back end of drafts in Superflex, and in most cases he's a third quarterback on some people's rosters. Next, David Montgomery is going to be a running back 1. He's in a contract year. He's a free agent next year, no matter what. I think with no plans in place, I think they're going to go out there and just use and abuse him. So if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be out there fighting for his money. And I think that with Fields, having to respect the run with Fields a little bit and respect, him running wide and rolling out, that they may leave a few lanes open in the middle for David Montgomery, and you may be looking at running back not one, but a top 12 running back on the season. 3, I say Kansas City will not have any wide receiver 1s or 2s on their roster this season. They have Juju, MVS. They drafted Justin Ross, Sky Moore. They have McCole Hardman still. I don't think any of these guys are going to return wide receiver 1 or 2 value on the season. I think this is going to be one of the only years that you see Mahomes out there working with wide receivers that maybe you consider subpar. Some weeks you can fit him in, but I think overall on the season, you're looking at a team full of wide receiver 3s. And I think Kansas City sometimes is going to struggle to run their offense through those wide receivers this season. My last hot take of the season for the beginning of the season is Michael Thomas is going to finish as a wide receiver 1. I know Drew Brees is gone, but this is a similar, it's not a crazy different offense. You have Dennis Allen, who has been with the Saints. He knows the team. He got rid of one of his defensive guys that he liked. He got rid of Gardner Johnson, a guy that's had issues with Michael Thomas in practice, a guy that fans didn't expect to get moved. If anybody was going to get moved, it was Michael Thomas. You heard so much about his back and forth with the coaching staff and all, but they didn't even try to move him. They got rid of Gardner Johnson. They kept Michael Thomas. I think that they're going to trust Michael Thomas this season. It seems like he's healthy. He's had a good camp. People, beat writers and locals have been going to see practices, and they say Michael Thomas looks like he's back. And with Jameis Winston, who can throw the ball, he was 12 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in six games last year, 6.5 games. It's pretty good. And I think there's going to be enough balls going around that Michael Thomas could be looking at, 7 to 10 touchdowns, and he could be looking at 140, 150 targets. And depending on efficiency of the offense and how they move, Michael Thomas could be looking at a back-end wide receiver 1 season. And for a guy that you were picking up in the 5th, 6th month or two ago, you're talking about 7th, 8th round, you can't beat that production. So Michael Thomas is a guy that I think will have that back-end wide receiver 1, very high-end, like wide receiver 2, like wide receiver 13, like right there on the fringe. So that's it, guys. Those are my hot takes. These are all my musts. I gave you my must starts. I gave you guys that I think you could still go out there and target to help your season, whether it be Dynasty this year and you're competing, guys that you can get on the cheap, and guys that can help you win your redraft league. If you have any questions or you want to disagree with me, you want to see better of where I'm coming from, go down in the comments, let me know, or send me an email at laughingmanfb laughingmanfb@gmail.com. Let me know what you think, and I'll see y'all again next week for week 2 of the NFL 2022 season. Y'all have a good one, and I'll see y'all then. Zip it up, zip it out.